Now we have to yeah, perfect. It's recording. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to the people on YouTube or who are like, "Whoa, what is this?" Um, this is the first Prometheus Dev Summit, which is completely open to the public and which is also recorded and will be published on YouTube in a few. I will share the meeting document once again with you. That is here. Please write yourself into the attendee list. The way we usually structure these, just to give everyone a quick rundown of how that is done. The agenda, we basically have a voting document in the back end where we vote on topics within Prometheus team. The highest voted topics make it onto the agenda. The clear winner with 9 votes is currently here. And we have 3 second places, and I'll just toss them all in and we can find consensus on what to talk about next. You're free to, like for the guests here, you're free to type up whenever, like there's no hard rules or anything. The only thing we would ask is try and not diverge too far from what's currently on the agenda. Like if you want to start a completely new topic or something, maybe don't do it directly in any particular meeting or in any particular topic. Once the discussion has reached a point of potential consensus, I will most likely make a powerful consensus where everyone can say yes or no, and we mark it green, or we optimize the wording until everyone agrees, or we mark it we couldn't find consensus. So that is roughly how this works. As per usual, I invite everyone heartily to help me write the docs, the meeting notes. And with that, I will mute myself and hand over to Björn, because he made a really nice document.
I've always have to find my unmute button. Okay, so first topic is, okay, it's already on the agenda. Okay, so there's a design doc for the famous or infamous new style histograms for Prometheus. I'm not sure who has seen this and has read it before. So far, some rock flying around me. So far, the comments were essentially about like this could be explained better, or there is kind of a separate discussion here that is not like in the core of this histogram topic. So there was so far, I think, no comment was like, you should have thought about X, and then I realized, oh gosh, yeah, I should have thought about X, and it's all invalid what I wrote. So far, I think it looks quite good. And ideally, we would come to the conclusion here at this Dev Summit that this is kind of the general way to go. And then we could just start coding. My expectation here is that this is very hard to incrementally push into mainline Prometheus. So I expect this to be work in a branch of various repos for a while, like many months. And then we will learn. And once we have some confidence where this will concretely end up, I think the general concept is pretty clear now. We can actually start to push things into. We have feature flags, right? So we could do some things in that way, but I think it's all kind of connected. And I would also not be surprised if this gives reason for Prometheus 3 to have this actually in the released mainline Prometheus server. Okay, so I don't know how we should approach this. Should we, if we could like discuss doubts, if anyone has them? Not sure.
As a reminder to all guests, you're all explicitly invited to speak. You're not just here to listen, you're here to speak if you want to. Like, you don't have to, but you're invited to.
Yeah. I mean, my take in general on this is that it looks really great so far, and that it's really like we're going to be experimenting, right? And we're going to be learning before anything final happens anyway. So, like, from me, all thumbs up for learning and experimenting.
Yeah.
I would, like, in terms of sequencing, just because you mentioned it, if at all possible, I would actually prefer if we get new histograms into Prometheus as an option, as something people can use, and then use Prometheus 3 or 4 as a sorry, I need to point someone at the other thing. Prometheus 3 or 4 as a point where we can clean up PromQL and make it easier to handle histograms in general.
Hmm. So my idea would
potentially throw out the old style histograms altogether if we can.
My idea would be to kind of get a proof of concept implementation in TSDB. I mean, there's a kind of already proof of concept for the client library in Go, which is piggybacking on the old protobuf format. So for the experiment, we probably should hack old protobuf support into current Prometheus, but of course not putting it into any release to not confuse people utterly. And then we can experiment with how it works in the TSDB, how, if this is even feasible, like this is kind of the most sensitive topic here, if it's freakingly expensive to query those histograms. And then we can come up with a good way to access those from PromQL, which I think, from my perspective, is the kind of most unsolved question here. And then we can also see if this could be an like upwards compatible extension of PromQL, or if this needs like some more fundamental changes that we could link to a Prometheus 3 or 4 or 5, whatever. Also, like, there was a bit of this is kind of quite relevant, I think, content-wise, the discussion in the doc, how to treat the exposition protocol. So I could totally see that, like, an open metrics, this could totally make it into open metrics, the protobuf version, quite easily, I think. But I think we shouldn't, like, confuse the people discussing open metrics right now with something where we don't know where it exactly ends up. But if we hack, like, protobuf support into current Prometheus, even if it's for the old format, it will be super easy to adjust to open metrics. Like, we could just reuse the hack later and finalize it. So I don't think we are, like, going on a detour by doing that.
And as a data point for everyone who's not on team, because everyone on team knows it's the intention that open metrics will adapt those histograms once Prometheus is happy, and Cortex and Thanos. And that will be one of the 2.x features of open metrics, potentially the single 2.x mainline feature.
Yeah, just a brief question on that makes total sense to just focus on the protobuf, because it avoids hard issues with how do you make it backwards compatible with the text format. But is there any, like, does that need to be assessed at this time, or is that completely like a problem to be solved later in terms of whether, it would be expressed in the text format in such a way that would make, like, older versions of the Prometheus server, exhibit very high cardinality or things of that nature?
I mean, the interesting thing right now is you can, I mean, with the proof of concept hack in Klein Golang, you can kind of expose traditional fixed buckets together with the new style histograms, and you could just kind of have a low resolution version of the high-res sparse histogram and present them to those that just ingest the text format, or that just don't know about those histograms. I think this is all possible, but for me, that's kind of, yeah, I mean, this could be safely solved as like a second thing once we know how the sparse histograms really look like. And I could also, like, since current open metrics is like saying the text format is kind of the core and the protobuf is the option, there might be a very good way of representing this in text, but I think that depends on details, and it's kind of moot to discuss right now. But yeah, I mean, I think kind of a backwards compatible low-res traditional version, that should be fairly simple to keep in if you want. Yeah, I mean,
And-
these are kind of the small problems in this whole thing.
And conversely, a new Prometheus could interpret the histogram type in the old style text format and say, oh, this has an LE label, like it says type histogram, so I can interpret this as if it were a sparse histogram and compress it more nicely.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, I mean, it
Yeah.
would mean it would be like you would query it differently, right? But it would allow people who want the new way of querying to not have to upgrade all of their instrumented applications all in one go.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you could just say, well, it's not many buckets because like the application doesn't know that it can do that now, but at least I can just query all my histograms in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, this to actually treat them all, then you need this kind of arbitrary bucket layout thing in the new histograms, which we might want to have, but perhaps don't. That's something we have to decide later, right? But I think this is all like whatever we do now, we will not close any doors to any of these ideas. We just, yeah, this doc is kind of that. So many people ask me, like, can I help with new histograms? And I said, yeah, let me just come up with a master plan. And I've been saying this for like years. And now that would be the master plan. We can like tell, and TSV expert could just start to hack on a new whatever chunk format that encodes those triple or quadruple delta values or something properly. All those things, right? People can just go wild now and have a framework.
If I'm reading the room correctly, I don't feel like there's anyone who is objecting to this. Like, it seems like I've only heard positive things, and I myself am positive about this as well. In fact, you've been sharing this research for years, so there's not even anything surprising here. So I think we should just finally get started.
Same.
Okay.
Was mainly waiting to see how the proto discussion goes. So let's see. So what is the proto consensus? Should we do a mini consensus or a consensus first on potentially enabling proto in Prometheus again, and then have the second one, or should we not?
I mean, this I would, because Bartek said like this should be a big and fat thing. I would actually keep it kind of under the radar that we put this into Prometheus right now, because I would really frame it as this is just an experiment. It is deliberately, it might or might not happen in mainline Prometheus in the future, but this is, I would say it's explicitly not a decision yet to about protobuf support in future Prometheus version.
I think that's fair.
I mean, perhaps there's just, we will find a really nice solution to all have it in whatever. I don't know. Like, I just don't want to speculate about it. I'm the protobuf fanboy here, right? So I'm saying this kind of, I don't want to use this as a vehicle to just sneak in protobufs again, and it should not be tainted by like even the suspicion. It's, yeah.
You have Rob, who's going to strongly agree.
I can't help myself. Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is like the scrape code is, and I hope that someone who knows, there are many other people on this call that can talk to this code much better than I can. But there is a lot of like code and state and logic in the scrape loop that like would have to be ported and made it wouldn't need to be productionized for protobuf again, essentially. So that's the only like major thing, I guess.
I mean, the current scrape code is essentially utilizing properties of the text format in a highly optimized way. That was kind of why protobuf got, almost as an accident, kicked out back in the days, because it was using And it's essentially, you could use exactly the same ideas for the protobuf format. You just needed to hand code the protobuf decoder, right? It will not work with the generator code. But this is like, even for the experiment, we don't even have to do this, right? We can, if we see, if really in the end ingestion is the bottleneck, then we can know, okay, but this is the bad generated protobuf code. And it has a lot of whatever allocations and weird ways, and we can use this and this trick to make this more efficient. So at least, like, should this be the bottleneck, we would know where to work. But I would expect it's not even the bottleneck at this stage, right? It's just the current ingestion code is just over-optimized in a way that it will never be the bottleneck, essentially. And if we then are like close to becoming a bottleneck, but not quite there, we still know enough. And then later we can still decide, if we have first-class protobuf support in a future Prometheus version, then we can say, okay, but then we also need the same ideas of like looking at the wire format to find out which time series this is directly and all those things. But again, this is all like, we can all explore those ways, and we're not making a decision about this right now, and we don't have to.
For what it's worth, we've done experiments about exactly this for remote write, to have exactly the same optimization that we have in this great path on a push model, and it does work. It is, as you said, a hand-rolled proto-parser, which is not a fun thing to write, but it absolutely works.
You have to do it only once. Yeah, I think, Rob, you did a similar thing, right? Or are you referring to the same work now?
I'm not sure if it's the same, but yeah, that is true. And I think you saw my terrible naming for the yeah, because of like the multi-depth of it, it does start to get rather crazy in terms of like buffering but I mean it is it actually, honestly, like once you write a library around it, it does the code flows very naturally. It's just you know, a giant wall of like code to to do it.
Yeah.
Looks like we've done the same thing in parallel at one point or another.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there probably should be a proto. This is completely off topic, but there probably should be a proto by hand parser encoder decoder, because all the ones out there kind of aren't great, and a lot of them are reflection based, which is super slow.
Yeah, and also the Prometheus 1 used the kind of worst possible auto-generated code from the official kind of reference library, and we could have already gained a lot by just using like GoGo protobuf or something, which we use now in remote write, right, or read. Like that's already an easy gain. But yeah, I mean, we know this is possible if needed, which is kind of giving some confidence.
So let's try for the consensus. And just as a side note, I like the idea of having just a component, a reference component, which could be reused by everyone. So let's try the first one. That might be contentious, but I don't think so. Consensus. We are open to having experimental protobuf scrape support in Prometheus behind a feature flag. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing?
I disagree. That's not what we discussed like 10 minutes ago.
I mean, I would see the development for this histogram stuff to just happening in a branch, right? Not even it doesn't even have to be locked behind a feature flag, because it won't be in the main branch at all.
Sorry I have two consensuses, which I split out into two. So you can read in the document ahead if you want to, or I can read the second one. The second one would be Gautam blocked it. So consensus, we like Gautam, you need to stop clicking. I can't read it.
Yeah, Gautham's name is too long. It covers all the text.
So the second one would be consensus. We like the design document. We like the design document and will experiment with it. First in a branch, then behind an experimental feature flag.
I feel like what the room was saying is the branch. Yes, I think the other thing we would need to separately vote on.
Okay.
Like I feel like my feeling is that if whatever is in the branch seems successful, then that's the natural next step. I'm not sure we even need to vote on it here.
It's already changed. So
I mean, it's not only a branch, because like there's already a branch in Klein Golang, a branch in Common, a branch in Klein Model. Like there are already 3 repos that have branches for this, and this is not even touching Prometheus yet.
Yeah, I think we all agree that a branch means that all different repositories
branch
you have.
repo.
Yep. So let me try for 2 new consensuses. We are open to having experimental protobuf. No, we can actually remove the. Yeah, let's keep experimental. We are open to having experimental protobuf scrape support in Prometheus in a branch. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? That will make a splash. Second one, consensus. We like the design document and will experiment with it in a branch. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Very good. Okay, so because I cannot count, I was confused earlier. We actually have a clear winner for the second topic. That one also belongs mainly to Björn, which is guidelines for open metrics transition.
Why does it mostly belong to me? Because I'm most upset about it.
You wrote it in, so it's yours.
Yeah, but yeah.
It doesn't
Okay.
matter.
I mean, we can kind of. So this is essentially. I mean, I'm kind of. I still remember our last in-person Dev Summit. We discussed a similar thing, right? And it was because as the Klein Golang maintainer and having this weight of, what is it, the 23rd most used Go package in the universe or something? Having this weight of whatever tiny breaking change I do will clearly be noticed by like dozens of people or even more. I don't know. So I'm super concerned about surprising, subtly breaking changes. And this is also why I was so concerned about the changes in Klein Java. So far, I think there was not a lot of outrage about it, but I haven't followed closely, but I think I would have noticed. I don't know. Like I saw that one person got upset about having many more time series because of underscore created. And I just like, we discussed this back and forth and weren't like, there was no clear evidence if we want X or Y and how to deal with all of that. And this is why I put it on here, so we kind of collectively come up with a idea what's okay to do, what's not okay. And yeah, perhaps we could even then publish something so people aren't surprised. Or it's of course also different that the other Klein libraries are probably all pre 1.0. So formally, you could say, of course, we can break Klein Java, but we can't break Klein Golang in the same way without a major version bump, which would be weird. Yeah.
A lot of them, yes, they're pre 1.0, but they're still like, people still complain if you break things. Like, they're relatively stable and have been for a while.
And I mean, there's ways to break things that are easier and that are not so easy to deal with. So for example, for us, the situation now is, okay, this is happening. That means we cannot upgrade client Java until we have cleaned up all our metrics across hundreds of services. Luckily, we have smart people, and someone set up an alert on having these metrics, which now is forcing every team to touch all their code and like make sure that their metrics are in line. Something we want to do, but not something I would prefer not have this tied to being able to upgrade.
Yeah,
at least also, not immediately.
This was a thing where in the discussion it was kind of we can put a breaking change into a new version because people are always free to not upgrade, right? And my idea is that we now, I mean, because we are kind of mainstream, so you get a lot of third-party software that has instrumented code, and if that third party decides in our new version, we run this new version of the Klein library and we run we have those metrics now, or we change them in this version because the library forces us. Like there are all those permutations where I was very worried that this would create a lot of backlash. It hasn't happened so far, I think. I don't know if anyone has seen a lot of backlash. Please speak up. But I mean, it would make me happy if it didn't happen. But perhaps it's also like because some mainstream Java code that is often used as third-party code hasn't even upgraded to new client Java. Not sure.
There's one point about Java. Java, because I had quite some in-depth conversation with people who work in the Java space. And by and large, the consensus was that they need to be doing deliberate upgrades to new versions of whatever they have as a library anyway, and they seem to have a lot more process around this for obvious business reasons, I guess. So they are special in as much as there it was almost clear that it would be relatively painless. I agree that with client Golang and such, there is much more of a concern. What Ben and I did for SNMP Exporter is we cut a release with pretty much no new features for SNMP Exporter, stating that this is the safe harbor release, and you have the new release after, and that will be breaking, and try to make some noise about it. But that is not ensuring that everyone who's using client Golang or such would be reading it. So maybe, yeah.
It's also like SNMP Exporter is the third-party software, right? You can decide to not upgrade it. SNMP Exporter is not embedded into some other software. Like, I mean, for client Golang, it's pretty obvious. If like Kubernetes just goes to the next major version of client Golang or suddenly activates OpenMetrics support in a mandatory way or whatever, and then everyone who upgrades Kubernetes has to deal with that. And they cannot just, I mean, their alternative would be to not upgrade Kubernetes. And I'm a bit, this was my concern with client Java, that you have a lot of those situations. You upgrade to fancy Java software, enterprise something X, and that software that you just buy or get from a third party now has whatever, underscore created, timestamps, or it all those things, right? That might or might not break. And you don't have the option to not, if you don't upgrade to the new client Java, you also don't upgrade to the new version of your third-party software.
But here you're basically introducing two new things, because that would mean that not only we have to carry all the options to enable and disable that stuff, also the third party or the end user software or whatever is in the pipeline needs to carry this forward.
Exactly, yeah.
It's documented, blah, 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 blah. And the other thing is that it is not the obligation of the library authors to inform end users of other software. You have the step of the developers in between. So I strongly agree that we as Prometheus should try our honest best or best reasonable effort to not break any setups. Of course, obvious. That being said, I don't think we are obliged to basically solve everyone's issues on Earth ourselves. So I do think that if we make it clear that, hey, here you have a breaking change, and here is the old thing, which has the same features and acts like the old thing, is probably enough.
So what you could study this quite nicely with Caddy. The Caddy developers thought, oh, I can activate OpenMetrics support in a limited fashion in client Golang. That's not even the full thing, like no underscore created timestamps, blah, blah, blah. But still, they decided this is a good thing. We should activate the option, and promptly got requests or complaints from their users that this and this has changed now. And then they, of course, they pinged me or whatever, and I said, yeah, of course you should just kind of enable your users to pick by propagating this configuration option. And they said, oh, great, we'll do this. And then the issue was settled. Like Caddy now has an option if you want to activate OpenMetrics or not. And in that way, of course, they had to like propagate the option, but they knew, I mean, they did not first, but they were super friendly, but because they realized, okay, I have this option. If Caddy was written in Java, it was like, okay, I want to use open metrics, but I want to give my users the option to not disable it. And then our answer would have been, no, you either use the old client Java or the new one. And then they would have been angry at us. So it's not that we should feel obliged to like fix their code, but we should give them the option and have a clear, where they essentially say, okay, now it's our fault if we don't offer it to our users, and not Prometheus's fault.
Isn't the typical thing you do here bump the major SEM version, and then like I completely agree with like giving the option to do it, but yeah, I guess like with a major SEMver upgrade, it's very clear that there's a breaking change in there. Ideally, you still give them the ability to downgrade, but that's typically like, I mean, if you want to get to a world where it's on by default, the only way to do that is have it on by default, and the only way to do that safely seems to be to do a major SEMver bump.
Yeah, I mean, this is true, but you still should give users the option to pick it by a flag. So in the Caddy example was actually, it wasn't such a problem if you just upgraded your Caddy and be done with it. The problem was if you had a few Caddy instances on the old Caddy version and a few on the new one, and then you have different metrics in details. Like in this case, it was the formatting of floats, which, of course, in a way that I still think was a grave mistake in Prometheus 2. It throws off Prometheus because Prometheus doesn't sanitize the float value in the LE and quantile labels, blah, blah, blah. Whatever, like this is just an example of something that can happen here. And now they have a flag, so they can run their new Caddy versions that they have in staging, whatever, with the flag of not doing it. And once they have all Caddy instances on the new version, they just flip the flag to the default and are happy, right? They have this control transition. But with having different, I mean, in a big installation, you will have different versions of the software running in parallel for a while. And if you don't have a flag to either, I mean, you cannot, yeah, I mean, you could put a flag on the old software to all, no, that doesn't work.
I don't think we're going to figure it out on this call.
No, but this is why I think there should be a flag where you could say.
I think we should. I think the amount of discussion clearly indicates we need to think about this more.
Maybe, but I mean, if this Java migration just works, perhaps it's not such a big deal. I think it's a big deal, but perhaps I'm wrong.
Question for me, like in general, is so a bunch of things change when you get to open metrics, right? You have to change your counters. Or like you have to make sure your counters are like have underscore total, a few flags changed. Do we have like a journey for a user, like how to get there? Because right now it's like with client Java, it's you just I mean, or at least one journey is you first fix your counters and then you upgrade.
The counters are fixed for you. It's in.
No, that's the thing. Well, the counters are fixed for me, but that breaks all my dashboards.
Okay, so yeah, that's a different
for a user. Like from the user's perspective, is first I make all my counters have underscore total, then and change all my dashboards, and then I upgrade the version.
We have a recording from the last or second to last KubeCon where we went through what you need to think of when you migrate to open metrics and what the changes are and such. It's a good idea that we can write this out as a kind of recommended upgrade path thing and checklist. I think that seems a little bit orthogonal from the update discussion itself, but I do believe that yes, this is a good thing. So I'll just, or we, of course, we have Rob and Ben also, we'll just take the action item. We see where it's published under Prometheus or Open Metrics. To judge the room, I think, just reading between the lines, we do have a consensus that we need a design document for this, that we will circulate this document widely, in particular on the developer and user list. and invite active feedback from our users on what they think they would need to do this safely. Is this a correct reading?
Yeah, I think it's also good to enumerate all the implications, because we haven't touched them all, right? It's quite a few ramifications of this.
But
for me, the reason
Matthias' point is right, that currently as a user, there is no open metrics documentation. And as we were asked by CNCF, like, do we want to participate to the Google Summer of Documentation, or I don't know what that's called. Maybe that would be like a topic to get like some end user documentation about what's open metrics and how you can migrate to open metrics and what you should look at. That might be like a task for that Summer of Docting.
I would argue strongly that there is plenty of documentation what it actually is, but we are also applying with the Prometheus, like with my Prometheus add-on, we are applying for Google Summer of Documentation. ATB is helping with that one. So we can also try and split that in between those two topics. I don't think it makes sense to apply just for that one effort. I think that's probably too small of a work package, because Summer of Docs is half a year of an experienced tech writer, which is a change from like a few years ago. I don't know how it was last year, where they actually pay for half a year of an experienced tech writer and not try to just magic people who never did this before. So I do think that would be too little of a work package, but it can easily fit into the whole theme of A, human readable documentation, and B, more hand-holding tutorials on how to get from X to Y.
For me, the reason I'm asking about how this journey would go is that it's also like it's the user journey that can inform our decision on how do we actually need, like, what do we need to do in our client library? Is it enough to document like this is like, and I think this may even depend, like, differ from ecosystem to ecosystem. Do we need the option to turn it on or off, or yeah?
Let me just make one point of order or call to order or whatever. Let's go with the consensus, because that is basically where we should be having this detailed discussion, and I think it will be a longer discussion. It will be largely non-interactive, so I would prefer to shove this into the document. But your point about per community or per language feedback is a very good one.
And we can also observe if the Java story goes well, or if there is still fallout to come.
Should we also have a second consensus about not upgrading the Golang exporters to OpenMetrics for now?
You mean the first party which live in the Prometheus repository?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the support right now is also rather incomplete, so
yeah, I don't see that risk either. And we have the next summit in a month, so we can just revisit it. And I don't see us switching everything over before next month. So I mean, we can, but I don't think it's going to have substance beyond.
Or let's say if we do it, it's an opt-in via a config flag, which defaults to the old behavior. I mean, that's probably safe to do. So people could play with it if they wanted to.
Depends on how you do the data model, because that was the reason why in Java it wasn't done.
No, I'm talking about what Julian said, the exporters written in Go. If you want, I think you should be free to allow your users to try OpenMetrics as it is supporting client Golang right now, but only as an opt-in, not as like the default or even mandatory.
I like that one.
Just an interesting thing here is it worth considering like a general environment variable that all the client libraries could kind of honor? Just because I guess like, you know, this seems like there's similar things to like HTTP proxy and no proxy variables where you really, if you really do want to control it in the same way that's across all the different implementations, like having something standard would be nice, even if hard.
You said environment variables, so
yeah. You said the magic word. I mean, I think the first step here, if we want like a cross.
Sorry, I'm going to do the same thing again because we keep diverging, and I want to nail down a little bit of the consensus we have, so we can base the future discussion on the knowledge that we actually agree. Consensus. We will create a design document exploring upgrade paths. We will circulate this document widely on our mailing lists, etc., to gather feedback on required upgrade paths, potentially per program. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? In first party. Okay, so second point of consensus, I just took what Björn said. Consensus. We might offer open metrics in first-party experimental exporter builds.
Can we add the word consistent so that we figure out a way to do that the same way for all the exporters?
Yes, that's a fair point. Consistent open metric. Consensus. We might offer consistent open metrics support in first-party experimental exporter builds.
It doesn't have to be build, it just has to be opt-in, right? It could be a flag and doesn't have to be an experimental build.
Yeah, okay.
We just have to find the consistent way of not having somebody naively installing a new version of an exporter suddenly gets switched to open metrics without noticing.
Yeah, I think for exporters, flags are good, and we can just settle on a flag, whatever.
Or environment variable. I mean, we don't have to define it now. It just has to be a consistent and in thing.
We might offer consistent open metric support in first-party experimental exporters through explicit opt-in.
Yeah.
All agree or disagreeing? Nice. So the next one is a tie between metric-based retention or dynamic retention, and between safe ways of using a Prometheus with untrusted targets. Now is the time to yell about what you want.
I feel like we have previous consensus of safe ways or scraping targets, so I think that one should be quick, right?
I feel the same. I'm not even sure what we wanted to discuss additionally. I felt like the previous consensus was to do it.
I might have copied it by mistake. It's Frederick's point. So
the consensus was that we would implement more limits into Prometheus.
Yeah, this is what I remember as well, and that we're open to exploring like ways of ignoring individual targets, but that this would only be an exploration and that we had not decided on anything in that direction. That's how I remember it.
In closely related news, I will be redoing the complete voting document from scratch and remove all the old context. So we have that is an insider joke among team. It's historically hard to get an overview. So Bartek, Julian, metric-based or dynamic retention?
Dynamic retention.
No, that is the discussion point.
Both.
Yeah, so okay, cool. You posted it. Yeah, I put up a design doc. Julian has also worked on that design doc some from, that was a year and a half ago now, I think was when we first started this, for a couple different options for supporting dynamic retention. In that issue, I would say the first point that we should decide is whether we want this in Prometheus core or not. There were some people who want it as like you would run it as part of PromTool or on a cron job using PromTool or something like that, versus inside of the Prometheus core itself was one discussion point that I don't think we've ever resolved. That would be good. That would be one goal I have for this discussion. Once we get there, I think we could iterate more on actual ideas and just also requirements and use cases for this would be good. So I guess my first question are, what are thoughts about supporting this in Prometheus, the server, instead of a sidecar?
In general, when I can not enable the admin flags or the lifecycle flags on a Prometheus server, I do it. And I don't think that this feature should oblige you to enable those APIs. So I would vote for having it in Prometheus core itself.
Yes, thank you. I was going to say exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, I think just because it could be a sidecar doesn't always mean it has to be a sidecar.
I completely agree with that. And as far as I'd prefer not a sidecar for many things.
I propose moving rule evaluation into a sidecar, and then we write back.
We will move you to a sidecar.
You're lucky I can't travel.
I mean, it would be an interesting experiment, I think, to build like a microkernel Prometheus where everything is just hangs together. And then if people really want to run their Prometheus on their refrigerator, they can pick and choose only the bits that they need. But honestly, for the main use case of Prometheus, retention is part of Prometheus, and it should just be part of Prometheus.
Prometheus is too much of a monolith. We need to break it into microservices.
No, I think it should be feature complete in itself.
So joking aside, I think we do already have consensus. Chris, do you want to? Of course, everyone agreed with you, so I'm putting you on the spot to just write the consensus out. Also, Chris is the only one taking notes alongside myself.
All right. Does that seem reasonable? We would like to implement dynamic retention inside of the Prometheus server. I'm not sure if it needs to be behind a feature flag because it would be a separate configuration that would default to nothing. So it kind of gets it for free, but.
Okay, yeah, fair. I'll remove it. So yeah, then let's try without the conditional. No one took you serious. I'll just read it out again, but no, you read it out again.
All right, we would like to implement dynamic retention inside of the Prometheus server.
All agreed? Anyone disagreeing?
Ooh. Get green.
This doesn't say anything about how exactly that should be configured yet, right? Because there's some alternatives in the doc.
Correct. This is just, we would like the idea. There are many proposed solutions for this.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So one additional point of order. We are currently at the full hour. As per usual, I have no problems doing another 10, but other people might. So do we want to have a break or do we want to continue?
5 minutes break?
5 minutes suck historically. Let's do 10 minutes, I guess. Or should we do 5? Everyone who wants 5, put your hand up. Okay, everyone who wants 10, put your hand up. Everyone who does not want any break, put your hand up.
Let's do 7, then it's 5 past 5, 5 past 4 UTC.
Okay.
Okay, so see you in 5.
5 minutes past the hour.
So I was just informed that no one heard the song, and just at the end of the song. So I'm just going to replay it for a bit.
Thanks.
You're very welcome. I wondered why no one complained.
I never did watch the 60 FPS whatever version of this link that got thrown somewhere.
It's the creepiest thing I've seen in a long time, honestly, so you're not missing out.
I felt like the discussion was enough.
While we're on that topic, I highly recommend this QR code.
Oh, gosh.
I had to print it custom.
Oh. Nice.
So 5 past. Welcome back, everyone. For the ones who are not yet back, I'm just going to say a little bit so it registers and people slowly start migrating back. Maybe give everyone 30 more seconds. For all the non-Germans, Volz and Holz is very similar, and this is Julia's love song. Okay, so I hope everyone knows. If you're back, can you switch on your video so we know you're back? As we're waiting for you. But we do have Frederick. So gRPC health protocol and black box exporter.
I think there's not much to this. It's just, I think Ben and I were discussing this at one point. Like gRPC has kind of a standardized health API, and since it's standardized, I feel like it should be part of black box exporter. That's the extent of it.
We don't have quorum, I think. We do have quorum. So, consensus, just do it.
I mean, is there any reason not to do it? What's the contra?
It was previously rejected.
Just because it's like too specific, or?
Yes.
You're making the mistake of talking while agreeing with each other. Again, consensus.
Yeah, I'm curious because I hadn't looked into it, so. And
you, I think it's good to know like what the options are. So, but if that was all the objection, then yeah.
The options were yes and no. The objection was not part of core black box exporter, which I would tend to disagree with. I do think that black box exporter should gain more functionality and more synthetic sugar. I mean, we can expand the topic of black box exporter itself, because currently, while you can do pretty much everything which you want to do through the TCP handling, it's just distilled pain to actually do it. So there is a good argument to be made that we could be adding more things, like, for example, the ability to send certain payloads over black box exporter and then get stuff back. Things which in the context of WorldPing or now synthetic monitoring of Grafana, we were discussing are, for example, do not fragment bit, size of ICMP payload. Do you put anything into the ICMP payload, which is, for example, useful for testing DSL lines and such, where sometimes if you have certain bit patterns, your modem and or your DSLAM might lose synchronization. And all those kinds of things are actually additional features which, if we are opening up black box exporter for more easier to hold, as it were, we could consider. On the other hand, this might be out of scope for the Dev Summit because it's just specific to one exporter. But if we have even wider consensus to to also do all the other things, that would also be nice.
Well, I mean, same fundamental thing, right? Just that you can technically do it somehow right now doesn't mean we shouldn't make it nicer.
Precisely. Like, I strongly agree that we need a lot more self-care, synthetic sugar, making it easier to use, more integration, deeper integration, less of a framework, more of a solution is my thought in this direction. So I'm just going to write down what other thoughts we had within Grafana Labs for synthetic monitoring, and I do think we already have at least a little bit of code, and that is also based on the black box exporter. No, he dropped. I don't know. Robert, Gautam, Björn, maybe Chris, do you have any more context of what we already, Callum, what we already have and what we could potentially just shove over into Blackbox Exporter? Or, Chris, if not, we can just start opening pull requests and be done with it.
Marcelo had to drop, right?
Yeah, he dropped.
Good no.
I think. Go on. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was saying, like, for now, like, we can limit this to, like, gRPC as the consensus and discuss. We can signal that we're open to more, as Grafana has use cases, anyone else has use cases, so that seems reasonable.
I think that seems reasonable. Like, without trying to make it too vague, I feel like anything that makes sense should be able to go in here, but like that's too wide of a statement probably. So I think we're all just trying to do the right thing of making this kind of stuff easier. And like we can discuss on a case-by-case basis, I guess.
David, you also want to say something?
It was just to clarify the point that I think Frederick said. It's just the standardized health check service was what, because the issue doesn't actually say that that's what the goal is. And while being able to call any gRPC endpoint might be an interesting feature, I think that's not what was discussed initially. It could be useful as well. But I think if I understand correctly, that was the initial suggestion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Hey, one quick question about the gRPC Health API. Is it like monitoring a whole component, or like one component can have several gRPC APIs? How does that work?
It's an actually specified gRPC API itself, the health check API. So this is something that a gRPC service process would implement.
And in the API, you can specify which service you want to get the health from. So that would be like a parameter of the probe. By the way, Frederick, is it something that Kubernetes implements?
It is not. It would be nice if it did, but.
So yeah, there is. I seem to remember there's a binary that gRPC provides, so you can run it as an executable probe on Kubernetes. Is kind of the way that this is currently suggested to be implemented, which obviously has other issues. So I think definite interest in having it in Blackbox Exporter.
I didn't know about that, but that's definitely super interesting.
Okay.
I attempted to write a consensus. You can feel free to edit it.
Let's do it like. Yeah, that's the beauty of how to catch the stuff. Or that's the trick. So consensus, we will implement all of the above. Or we are open to implementing all of the above. Maybe don't overcommit. So we are open to implementing. So consensus, we are open to implementing all of the above. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Nice.
I felt like there was an additional, more specific one around gRPC health endpoints.
Well, but now it's included in this consensus, right?
Yeah, precisely, that's the point. Everything which we discussed is now included.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
That's why I rewrote it, because if we try to have this inclusive list, blah, 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 it's just endless typing. And so we're just approving the section above. Sick observability is happy with the section above, end quote. That's the same trick. Okay, we are too quick. I failed to move the next topic up. So you can sing and dance while I do some quick counting. --help prints to standard error, not to standard out. Now we're going into the really old stuff. So I'm going to copy and paste this into the main document, and then.
Yeah, I mean, the box scrub often runs as in we run into an issue, and it's a fairly easy decision, but it's a decision, so the box scrubbers don't feel empowered to just make that decision. And then we just put it on the agenda, so it might be easy thing to just decide.
Which is absolutely what is like. That's an easy way to fix this.
Yeah, this is probably like common wisdom. Is it really like what's the Unix standard, and are we in line with it or not? And we should just collectively decide.
I've seen all of it. I do like it better when tools print the help to standard out. At least when you like specify the -- help flag, because it's it's easier to pipe it into less, and sometimes our helps are very long. The other side of it is, but I think that doesn't really apply to any of our components. If you have something where you would process the output, right? You suddenly accidentally and capture it in a variable. Suddenly you're accidentally capturing the usage colon in the variable. And that's for me the only reason to not print a standard out.
So my memory was, and I just did some quick Googling, that it's common to put it on standard out. The rationale being, and I agree with that rationale, that you are explicitly asking the program to output the help text. As such, that is the result of the user intended action. So I would say that everything in Prometheus should just go, like if you do any, I think we should just move everything to or all help version and such similar to standard out if it is explicitly asked for. Does anyone feel strongly it should go to standard error, or feel not confident making this call right now?
Does anybody feel we should not have a guideline like this? This is kind of the thing, right? So far, we just do as we see fit, and we don't care, and we don't want to change it, and we don't want to burden people with this code. But if we have a guideline, we should just kind of see it as a bug fix to fix it in all our components.
I think consistency is good. Of course, if PromTool, for example, does it on standard error out and Prometheus does it on standard error, you will break someone's setup and they will be rightfully annoyed at us. Also, please speak up and don't just write in chat, because there's lots of...
Just I can't remember how many times I had to redirect std to std out just to do a less or a grep or whatever to find an option.
So I put the Weasel word in, should, so it's not a hard guideline or it's not a hard rule, but as a statement of intent, it is strong enough, I guess. So consensus, results of explicit user actions like --help and --version should go to standard out. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? We're on a roll.
Okay, I'll update the bug right now then.
Do we have consensus that this is not a breaking change?
Yeah, we should consider the bug fix.
Yeah. Does anyone feel this is breaking?
Well, this is why it was not done.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it should be called out as a change in the release notes, but
we should agree right now that that we can do this without bumping the major release.
Yeah, I don't think this is anywhere in our stability guarantees, but maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, any change is a breaking change depending on your. Somebody pasted the obligatory XKCD for this,
Yeah, yes, someone will definitely say, "Hey, this broke my workflow," and like we should call it out in the release notes as, "Hey, this is a change. You're aware."
This is why we need to agree that this is a change, of course, as everything, but it's not like it doesn't require a major version bump.
Yes.
Okay, I retroactively added this to the discussion, and Julian, sorry, is just hashing this out as a consensus. So consensus, this is marked as a change in the release notes and does not require major version bump. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Very good. And I need to start counting again to click in resolving stuff. Ah, that's a long one. Julian, should we have long-term support in Prometheus? Sorry, and explicit, not long-term storage, but long-term support version of Prometheus.
Yes, so what we do notice is that our users are quite slow to upgrade and like they are really lagging a lot behind. And I would like to explore the option to say that, hey, we will support that release for a bit longer than just 6 weeks. Because currently, once the 6-week mark is passed, we never do bug fixes, right? So I would like to see like, if teams are interested into that, if that would be like in the benefits of the users, or if it should just like go as we do now.
So as a data point, we had a similar discussion within Grafana Labs half a year ago or so, for Grafana, not Prometheus. But basically the end of that endless and convoluted discussion was that A, it would need an actual user who has a strong need, and B, it would need someone willing to do the work, and C, we expect that this is inevitable in the medium to long term, that someone will just threaten enough money, support, doing it themselves, whatever, that it will happen at some point for industrial use cases and such. I suspect that the same might be true for Prometheus. Like it's a little bit different, no front end, it's a back end, blah, 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 blah. But I suspect that it might be different here, that basically we won't stop anyone from doing it, but we will not actively do the work ourselves unless there is a good trigger.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's basically what Red Hat's already doing.
I don't know what Red Hat's doing.
Maybe
yeah,
Simon.
I think Frederick wants to say that that's why you go and buy support to a company if you want that long term.
Okay.
Because Red Hat already does exactly this. Red Hat has long-term support for various pieces in the Prometheus ecosystem.
I suspect Tina and myself have thoughts around depth versus RPM, but let's not go there.
I was going to say I'm obviously interested in this, and it would be great if it was synchronized with Debian releases. We are de facto doing this, but of course we don't do more than basic backporting of fixes when something's serious enough.
Oh, I mean, I haven't been at Red Hat for a couple of months, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, Simon, that's basically the same. And unless there's a screaming customer, it's probably not happening.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a difference, is that we don't ship RPM for Prometheus. We only ship container images. And so the release cycle is much shorter than with RPMs now.
How many things would we actually backport?
Bug fixes.
All of them, or?
Yeah.
At the very least, anything which is really breaking and everything which is security, I would say. Ideally, we would steal some sort of guideline from some other established thing which does similar and is in a similar space. But I think the obvious answer is anything security related and anything which does not have an an okay workaround and can lead to service disruption. I think
So,
that would be the
like it's been a while, but like at CoreOS times, CoreOS did ship like upstream Prometheus, and so it did happen a handful of times that we did backport bug fixes and did releases of non-current minor versions. Like if anyone is willing to do this and willing to do the release, and it's not a feature, like I think as long as someone who's not me leads that, I'm perfectly happy with that. Right?
So the other my take on this is we've made no serious breaking changes to the query language, the config file. Like everything is so forwards compatible that we've not really there's nothing that makes it hard for people to upgrade. Our upgrades are so completely easy that like there doesn't seem to be a motivation to like not just update your minor version, and like there's no reason to backport a fix when the roll forward is just transparent to the end user.
Well, you get the new bugs as well.
And don't forget that many times there are important changes in performance that only get realized later.
Yeah, and we've made almost universally performance improvements, not performance regressions.
But still, LTS is about risk more than about difficulty of upgrade.
Yeah.
I was going to say the same, because like we can say this after the fact, right? But it's hard to say during the situation. So I get why companies like Red Hat have policies like that only bugs are being backported.
Let's turn this around. Does anyone want to do the work today? Does anyone know of anyone who is interested in having this and not able and willing to pay either Red Hat or Tina to do the work in either RPM or DEP-based systems?
Again, like if I had a customer who wanted to throw money at me, I would probably do it. Like, but I don't have that right now. So.
Like toss enough money at any of the people in this call and we'll do the work. The question is, as we don't have anyone who wants to do the work, as we don't have anyone who has a direct need, and as we have for the two main families of distributing software in systems which are usually long-term used and not just cattle, there does not seem to be any immediate need. That's the point I was trying to make. I mean, agreed, if someone pays for this, if you see this on YouTube and you want to get rid of some money, please get in touch. But
no, I'm just saying, like, I don't think I would reject anyone. Like, I'm not sure what we're trying to decide on right now. All I'm trying to say is, if someone wanted to do this, why stop them?
I don't think it's about stopping. It's about, do we want to do this as of today? That's how I read Julian's point.
Something from what I think Ben was saying before, it's true that it seems that right now it will be not too much work to keep a long-term support version by backporting necessary fixes. And that's something that could very well align with the distribution work. So that's something maybe I could look into to do in parallel with the Debian work, if it's something that people will be interested in.
I mean, this is probably too small of a group in this call to actually have the reach which we would need. But as this is now on the record of the Dev Summit, that's the word I was looking for, or two words. we can also use this as a basis and just ask the wider community if there's interest in carrying this, and if there is interest, if anyone is interested to do the work in the community or to potentially put money where their need is. And if Frederick and Tina are interested in this, that, yeah, perfect.
All I was trying to say is that, like, if someone wanted to take the lead on it, I think they should do it.
I don't think anyone says we shouldn't have a long. Okay, so but that's actually a fair point. Should we just, for the record, make a consensus that we would be happy to allow this in Prometheus, provided someone commits to doing the work?
That's what I was thinking. Like, I don't see any opposing to this. Like, we don't want to do we're not going to do the work, but are open to someone else doing the work. Does that seem?
I mean,
that seems to be what I'm hearing.
Yeah. So what's not clear to me in this is, I mean, anyone can do the work, right? Red Hat can do whatever they want in their own forks, but
I'm explicitly saying that we give them access to Prometheus to carry a long-term version in Prometheus, which by extension becomes an official long-term version. Of course, obviously, it's living in Prometheus.
Yeah, like how I imagine is they become a maintainer, maybe path to team eventually of I maintain long-term support for Prometheus.
Yeah, I was going to say this seems like a good opportunity to onboard new people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anybody on Prometheus team can backport patches to any patch release and release it themselves. There's nothing stopping this.
Yes. I would request that if any of us gets paid to do that, tell us that you're doing it because you're getting paid, just so we know the context in which it's happening.
I think that's standard within Prometheus anyway, but yes, it's a good point. That also takes away all the mental overhead of asking that one person to maybe do that other thing as well. Because if you know they're getting paid, you don't have to beg them. You know that you're actually indirectly getting them more money. For an official release train. So for a consensus, if someone wants to do the work, we will offer them Prometheus for an official release train. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing?
I would say if they commit they have to commit for the long term, right? That's kind of
yeah, fair. If someone commits.
What is long term, by the way? Is it a year or 2?
That would need to be determined at that time, I guess. So my expectation would be, and we can also make this part of the consensus, and we probably should, how this is usually done, unless you are a certain RPM-based distribution which takes the promise back. You say at release time, we will keep support for at least X amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do not ever break that promise. And yes, that means that if we as Prometheus team make that promise and then that person goes away, we are still on the hook for providing that long-term support. So I would expect that initially we make guarantees for maybe half a year or a year, and as we gain more confidence, we would keep extending that promise, or we would simply deprecate that one version and then put a new promise on the next version. Or something else which is done in Debian context quite regularly. If you want to have that one version supported more for a longer time, put money where the mouth is, pay someone to do the actual work to keep backporting for that specific version which you personally care about.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Should we add into the consensus that details will be worked out later, or is that?
Yeah, we can also. I mean, we have a recording now, so I can just backport my what I just said into the meeting notes. If everyone is fine with that.
That's fine by me.
Anyone disagreeing? Okay, so I'll just add it to the meeting notes after the fact. Okay. So, consensus. If someone commits to do the work, we will offer them Prometheus for an official release train. for an official long-term stable. If someone commits to do the work, we will offer them Prometheus for an official long-term stable release train. They will need to commit to a specific future period ahead of time. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Perfect. And Tina, if you put your email address into the attendee list, then everyone who wants to find you.
So to put my email address where?
In the you put your name in. Let me share the thing more. Here. Just put your email address behind. Also, everyone is more than welcome to put their company affiliation if they want, but no, you don't need to. But yeah, if you put your email there, then everyone knows how to contact you if they want to have a long-term Prometheus.
So just to clarify, what do we mean by we will offer them Prometheus?
That they are able to have a branch in there in which they can carry this forward, and also they get official release notes, and they can release 2.27.708.
Yeah, like per our governance, they would be a maintainer, I think is how that would play out.
Yes, per governance, they would be at least a maintainer. I agree that it seems to be a good path towards complete onboarding. Yeah.
So I put my email there as a suggestion, and I've been trying to find a place to contribute properly to Prometheus for a long while, so this might be a good opportunity.
You need to. Sorry, I killed it.
Sorry, what, Luigi?
You need to write it in again. Sorry, I just killed it.
Okay, no worries. As I was saying, yeah, I think I will be interested in trying this out. Although I might need some initial help to get set up.
I suspect you get more than yeah, absolutely. So you're very currently marking. If you could just write yourself in again. Oh, there it is. Perfect. Okay. Perfect. We are too quick. I need to get the next topic. So Julius should just tell us a few jokes while we wait.
What does a polar bear get when it sits on a sheet of ice for too long?
A polar signal?
Polaroids.
So next is Bartek with a joke.
I pass. I'm too tired.
Help him.
Pass to.
So next one is PromQL compliance. That's a good one. So maybe as a short recap, everyone here in this call will be aware that Julius did quite some work around having a compliance overview of PromQL and which piece of software is currently at what level. I would like to recommend that we put this, or Julius and I would like to recommend that we put this onto Prometheus main site as an official stamp of approval of the various pieces, bits and pieces of PromQL compliance. There's one thing which is diverging from how CNCF compliance testing is currently done in other spaces. That is, it is not fully automated, and it's not clear if that kind of testing will ever be completely automated or if it needs a subject matter expert to interpret the results in the more corner casey things. I do think that this is a trade-off which we could make, or which we should make, actually. Of course, we just have too much confusion in the market about what is actually compatible and what is not. So I think we should be moving more compatibility, both as in written prose to help, and besides all the reference code which we have, and also test suites and also test suite results into the open. So it's easier for other projects, other vendors to just more or less self-certify until the point where they're confident, and either they need us to do this or they don't ideally. And if you're a vendor or a project and hearing this, please help with all the compliance testing. We would love this. So yeah, thoughts?
Do I understand you correctly that your first thing that you wanted to do is kind of write a blog post? I think we talked about this once, saying that, you know, Prometheus team says vendors should use this test suite to certify themselves, or like what exactly do you want to move to Prometheus at the beginning?
So as the first thing, I would like to move the result set over, but we should also make this public. So blog post, sending it on the mailing list, like all the usual channels which we have, to just make people, the users, aware that this is now officially blessed and not just a side project by Julius and Promlabs. And that this is the official reference that Prometheus project itself considers these and that pieces of software compatible with PromQL to this and that extent.
I mean, in the sense of transparency and in the sense of making it possible for people to get better, we should pair that with, and here's the test suite.
Of course.
Like this is how we got to this result, and here's how you can test yourself.
Yes. Open parenthesis. It is not trivial to just have test results. You need someone who is somewhat familiar with the whole thing.
That's okay.
That's obviously putting a burden on anyone who wants to self-certify. But ideally, they spend the time they are investing on improving that test suite, so they pay it forward for the next person who wants to run through the thing.
No.
Yes, we do.
It should be reasonably possible. It doesn't have to be trivial.
Yeah, and people are doing this already. I mean, the tester is open source. The test query sets are all in the repo and everything. They just needed some details sometimes, like how exactly do I set it up? But then there was no problem. I'm totally happy for making PromQL testing compliance more official. I haven't really thought about yet, like, do I want to move those repos to the main Prometheus org? Obviously, they're open source. People can just fork them and stuff like that. But yeah, I can think about that. Like, we can talk about that more privately as well, I guess. But yeah, currently they live under Promlabs. The test results live on promlabs.com, and the tester tool lives under the Promlabs GitHub repo. It's kind of nice, you know, like on the one hand, it's one thing that gives a bit of publicity to the company, but on the other hand, it's kind of like you're politically a bit exposed because you're kind of, you know, testing all these vendors and they might get angry at me and stuff. So that from that point, it could be nice to, you know, actually give it to the project as a whole.
I do feel we had that conversation half a year ago or so.
I don't remember the details around like moving over the specific bits. Yeah.
For the consensus part, I would just say that we phrase it so that both is possible. Either we bless the external resource and just link to it, or we put it on Prometheus.io, because then you can do whatever. So let's do first for the PromQL test results.
I think it's worth pointing out the journey that like Kubernetes went through here as well, because while the result that we have today with Kubernetes is highly automated, that was not necessarily always the case. Like the test suite has existed for a very long time, but it was practically not usable. Wrote that test suite. And it only really became a thing that everyone tested this when I think Heptio developed kind of a tool to run it against your cluster. And I believe to this day, I mean, now it's VMware, but like to this day, this tool is not in Kubernetes, but practically everyone uses it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, as long as we have the rules stated as the Prometheus project, for all I care, like the tool can be part of Promlabs. It's kind of how I see it.
So you're proposing moving the test results to Prometheus IO, but linking to this test suite to PromLabs and leaving it at PromLabs long term, but officially blessing it as Prometheus project.
I'm not sure what I said about Kubernetes is necessarily transferable one-to-one. I don't know if this is reasonable in any way, but if we can have an actual specification, then the specification would be part of the Prometheus project, but the tool to run it could belong to PromLabs. I personally haven't spent enough time to make a qualified statement about the situation about PromQL compliance here, so I just wanted to share the Kubernetes story.
No, it's a good story.
But if it stays at PromLabs, we kind of put some burden on Julius, right? Because we expect him to keep him up to date by himself, and that kind of things.
I don't know. That the specification is the true truth in that sense. Then, if we can come up with something like that, and in that kind of scenario, it would actually be flipped around. Julius or PromLabs would be kind of held accountable to keep that up to date.
For free.
No, not for free.
Last time Grafana sponsored quite nicely. That was great. But yeah, I think there's a lot of little details to be ironed out. I can see benefits of both, like keeping parts in PromLabs or moving everything over to Prometheus IO. I would have to also think about that a bit more. Obviously, if it's in Prometheus, someone still needs to regularly run those tests, and that's more of the question, I guess.
So just for the sponsoring, of course, I thought everyone on team knew this, but doesn't matter. That was basically like Jobs.io. So sponsor the work, but hands off with results or testing or anything in specific. And I do think that is healthy for the ecosystem. I think it should be up to Julius where he wants to have that code to live. Of course, it's his work. And if he wants to earn money with consulting around that piece of code, that's more than fair, in my opinion, as long as the result set is transparent, reproducible, blah, 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 blah. I do think it's actually healthy if you enable someone to live, maybe not off of that one single thing, but to support their business with that thing. So I would say that we as a project should simply bless what Julius created, and for both the test results and the test suite itself, let him choose where he wants to put it. My own preference would honestly be to have the test results on Prometheus.io. Of course, it gives them more weight. But it would be absolutely fine to bless the test suite, to back refer to that blog post, blah, blah, blah. We could also have a thing where Julius blogs on Prometheus.io and on PromLabs about having done the actual, like the current run of the test suite and just published a new thing or so. So I think it's absolutely okay that if there is outside interest in sponsoring that work, then it's sponsored outside, because like most of us like getting paid for what they do.
I guess the biggest issue I have is like, I get how this makes a lot of sense for companies, but let's say there's a new open source project out there, like that doesn't necessarily have funds, right, to pay for something like this. That kind of is the conflict that I would like to avoid. Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
The catch-all would be Grafana Labs paying for this, like we did last time. Like we had M3DB in there, we had Thanos in there, we had, let me see what others we had, and like you can thank Grafana Labs for the work. And that's completely fine. Like it's healthy for the ecosystem. That's why we decided to do it. And I think that it's absolutely fair to either just have a company pay for, if there needs to be payment for a certain test, then that a company sponsors this. And Julius is also trying to get sponsorship from other companies. And at the same time, I also think it's absolutely fine for, if it's just a project, to do this on the side as part of the open source thing. If it's a for-profit company, ideally in the medium term, they pay for this themselves, because it's in their best interest.
I know that M3 was interested to run this as part of their release process, right? In their CI.
I don't know, but Rob Drone
left, right? Yeah, he's no longer here.
Yeah, but I mean, we're in details, honestly, like deeply in details, to pull this back into the or onto the high level, and to stay with intentions and not specific implementation. Consensus. We will bless Julius Consensus. We will bless Julius PromQL test suite. He may or may not move his test results and/or test suite to Prometheus.io or the org or the. To Prometheus. Let's just say Prometheus.
Do we need a consensus to say that he will do something or he will not do something?
No, we need the consensus to bless the result
Okay.
of the test suite. And the rest is the, yeah, okay, I mean, we can, if we say that he may or may not, we are opening up formally the way to the path to do this, but
Okay.
it's kind of lawyering the absolute edge case, so we can also just drop that. But let's just run it once more and see if we get consensus, and we can also lawyer it after. Or if we don't get consensus. So consensus, we will bless Julius's PromQL test suite. He may or may not move his test results and/or test suite to Prometheus. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Very nice. I like having a recording. As no one else keeps writing notes, I can do this after the fact. It's a lot easier to force you all to write notes if you're in the same room. So we have 8 minutes left, and we have a few with 4 votes. So as options to discuss, I have on offer analytics use case, have a Google form for vulnerability handling, getting rid of the package directory. I think we already discussed this, didn't we? And we also have package management, dep, RPM, etc. Anyone feel strongly about any of those?
Can we drop the vendor directory?
Yeah.
It's about the PKG directory, Matthias.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Then never mind.
Perhaps that's something we can quickly clarify. Was this Bob still here? Yeah, he's still here.
It's your topic anyway, Björn, so just go ahead.
Yeah. So are we picking that topic?
Yes, apparently.
Okay. So PKG directory, my problem, I mean, I don't really feel strongly how we should organize the code. I just want to understand how we organize it, and I would like to keep it consistent. I see a bunch of packages in PKG and a bunch of other packages not in PKG, and my pattern magic doesn't tell me what's the rule. When is a package in PKG and when not? Plus, that's the thing that's linked from there. Apparently, the reason why PKG exists in so many Go projects is like a historical accident, essentially. That was never meant, this is like an artifact from the Google build system, and was never meant to be in the public. People just adopted it, perhaps for good reason, and I just thought we should kind of express what we want, and then we should follow that rule. That's essentially why I brought it up. And Bartek can probably explain what the meaning of PKG is from his perspective.
No, that's perfectly makes sense. It's just a convention that happened to be reused on many fronts. But I feel, especially for the project which is not library like Prometheus, it's actually amazing to separate those packages, because like packages, the kind of libraries parts that can be reused across, imported by anyone really, because we are not putting that behind internal package, for example, should be in the separate package directory. And the reason is because we have plenty of other unrelated stuff, right? And CMD is one example, but we have testing code, we have UI, we have different scripts. That's why I would vote for having package, but I would be happy to just have one as well.
I mean, the argument would be that packages that are not supposed to be imported by others should be an internal, and everything that is not an internal is supposed to be is up for grabs, essentially, right? That's the idea. That's, I think, what Dave Cheney wrote in the linked article.
Yeah, but the problem is that internal is blocker in Golang, that you cannot import it at all. And I don't think it's playing nice with others to do that. What I like to think of is that what is in PKG is not first-class features of Prometheus, and the storage, the TSDB are then first-class packages. And when you dive into the code, you first meet the TSDB, the storage, the script packages, but not how we parse the timestamps.
I didn't quite understand that.
Yeah, I was trying to write notes, but I missed it. Sorry, would you repeat?
So when you look in Prometheus now, the first class packages in the root are TSDB, scrape. So this is the main features of Prometheus. But what is not big features are basically in the PKG directory, maybe how we parse timestamp or how we parse the text. The text stuff that's in PKG now, but the main feature that the end user will meet will probably be in the main packages of Prometheus.
But that's a very different idea from what Bartek said, right? That's almost the opposite.
Yeah, no. I think Julius just wanted to motivate why we have the thing like that, right? Yeah. That we try to treat separate packages in different, hierarchy. What I'm saying is that this is very controversial. I would say Discovery is also important thing, and other could be also important things. So that's hard to decide. And I want to point one more bad effect is that we literally have replicated code and have something in the package like labels and then different labels on outside. So just having a flat structure and everything in PKG and then go through the maybe technical components kind of hierarchy. There are good models we could follow as well. Would be something maybe easier to follow.
But if everything is in PKG, then we could also just not have PKG, right?
Well, the PKG, I heard Peter Bourgon argue for it on Twitter a bunch of times, and it's if you have a repo that has not just Go code, then it's nice to have all your Go code in CMD and PKG, and all the other DIRs would be your scripts, your hacks, your makefile, whatever. I kind of like that approach to having all the Go code in kind of easily findable, defined directories. But
now we can have a mega rap battle between Peter Bergen and Dave Cheney about the PKG. Okay, after
Twitter again.
I have to drop sharp at 6, but as said, I don't feel strongly, but we should have. I mean, we see that there are very different ideas what that even means. I think we should just have a rule why and for what we use it. And I tend towards this is so subtle to define that we should just not have it. But I would accept anything else. Just have a rule so we agree what it means.
Okay, while we make the rule, we should also look at the cost of refactoring everything like that.
I mean, refactoring can be done in a lazy fashion, right? We just need to say what our intention is, and then whenever we add a new packet, we can take it into account, and if somebody feels bored, they can just refactor some code.
But then do we close all the old pull requests? Instead of encouraging people to update them again?
I mean, I think it's easy to say in a pull request, we have decided to not put this into PKG, please do it the other way around, or we have decided to put everything into PKG, so please do it the other way around. I think we need a rule anyway, right? The rule can't be put stuff into PKG if you feel like it, but we have no rule for it. That would be bad, right? That's what we have now.
I honestly have no opinion. I would like there to be like a consistent way to organize our repositories as well. Like right now, it's even inconsistent between the Graphite and the Statsy exporter, but that's on me.
Okay, I have to drop, but please come up with a rule if you can. See you, bye-bye.
There's one last announcement, one last thing. Tomorrow at 13:30 UTC, we will have the first Open Metrics Dev Summit of the year, or Dev Call, or what have you. I'll send information on the Prometheus users or developers list and also on the Open Metrics list. It will only be a half hour because currently we only have like low-level stuff. But in the spirit of aggressively open for New Year, New Us, now that 1.0 is out, you're all heartily invited to attend the Open Metrics one as well. Again, I'll send email and you'll see it on Twitter, blah, blah, blah. So I'll make sure everyone sees this. For the Prometheus one, we did it a little bit more low-key to see a little bit more low-key to see how it goes. I think it went well. So let's open the floodgates and see you tomorrow or in a month.
See ya.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.